And I came out in the environment of the women's liberation movement and also the bar scene. So I had the benefit of both of those cultures, and they were quite different cultures when I was coming out. But during the time that we're talking about, in Richmond, you mostly had either the bars for men. There was the Block, which was, as it still is, I think, down around the Richmond Public Library area. There were various restrooms. The Grand Central Station on Broad Street was during World War II a great meeting place. The Richmond Public Library, some of the places Bobby was mentioning. Tanglewood, which was out in Goochland, was a place that people would go out to, and lesbians went out there, especially after softball games or bowling tournaments.
That was the log cabin that you saw.
And most people, it was a social circle that they were in of some kind. It might be connected to the bar scene, or it might be connected to other things. It's often very, very private. Of course, at that time, there was also in Richmond both the drag houses and families, and as the city at that time was a very segregated city, those groups were also very segregated. But that was a very important part of our culture that was going on then, and we had the experience of having a few comments from Donnie, who I last saw at a city council meeting, where we were talking about some different things related to our community. And I first saw Donnie when I worked at Regency Square, and at that time, her wardrobe. And it was a very different look from what was later associated. Anyway, I think we have always had people in our community that were recognizable in some way, so that even during the closet years, that was the case. And those were the people who would get the most harassment, because, you know, in some way they did not fit the mold of what people thought everyone should be like. And so I think that that's been true throughout time. And, you know, I would say today we need to be careful that we're not turning around and doing that ourselves. But that community, which was very fragmented, was a very fearful community. Even in the mid-'70s, when I went to Nikki's, which was a lesbian spot in Carytown, across the street from the Bird, where the Track restaurant was for a long time, Italian restaurant in the daytime, lesbian spot at night. The blinds on the door were closed. There was a closed sign. You went up and knocked on the door, and they looked out to decide whether to let you in. So that was in the mid-'70s. And so there was a good reason that people were afraid. Bobby was talking about the ABC laws. Somebody who was arrested very definitely was likely to lose their job, because they would probably have their name put in the newspaper. And the other place that impacted, particularly for women, was with child custody. We didn't hear about it that much because people would very, very rarely appeal a child custody case. And it wasn't a matter of public record before it was appealed. But many women lost custody of their children at that time. When we started up Lesbian Feminist, Richmond Lesbian Feminist in 1975, that was one of the critical issues that lesbians thought was important at that time, because it was. But it was, as with people being closeted, many of our issues in a way were closeted because nobody knew about that. Unless you knew a woman who had lost custody, it wasn't in the paper, it wasn't in the news. So a lot of the things that were happening to us even there in the 70s were invisible to the wider society. And that, I think, had you know, it made people feel much more isolated. People felt very isolated, and many people felt very fearful, and with good reason to feel fearful.